Welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. I have a super interesting guest today that I happen to know very well, but all the people listening and watching probably do not. And I do want to remind people in our industry that oftentimes we use products in the industry, products that are adjacent to the industry, and we rarely get to meet or understand the roles of the people behind those products. And today I have Michael Holleran, who is the chief engineer of Tow Club Towing Software. Mike, thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think we'd set this up a couple times before, and now we've made it happen.
Yeah, well, I know you've been busy with your keyboards and doing all the stuff that I don't quite understand, but hopefully by the end of this, people that are more versed than I am will understand what you do. But Michael, obviously, and to everybody listening, Michael and I have a friendship for many, many years, and he has advised me in my personal business from a technological perspective what I should and shouldn't be doing for a wide variety of reasons, and for many other benefits for my own business. But I would like for everyone to understand, what Michael's role at Tow Club is, what exactly he does, and so that towers can understand, the difficulties and the challenges of producing a product such as Tow Club for the benefit of the industry. Michael, I want to start by kind of asking you, I mean, and obviously for everyone listening, I know many of the answers to this, but I would like everybody else to know. Share your journey through the tech space, and how you ended up at Tow Club, and maybe discuss, some of the paths that brought you here.
Oh yeah. When I met you, I was still I can't remember if I was still working for startups, various ones that rise and fall, and ended up at one where you had been hounding me for a good long time. We got to be able to do this better. We got to be able to do this better.
Right.
And you kept insisting that it was easy. We've discovered that it takes some effort, but I ended up at a corporate the last startup I'd worked for before Tow Club got acquired by a lofty tech company, and then I decided to jump both feet in with you in towing.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And for those of you listening, I have a great deal of respect for Michael's abilities and what he's been able to do with the Tow Club product. One of the things that, just to follow up on what you said, Michael, that I want people to understand is, first of all, you're absolutely right. I did assume it was easy. I've learned otherwise throughout, what is this, 5 years or so of the journey to get the product to this working point for the towing companies that are using it. And yeah, it has not been easy. There's been a lot to do. What a follow-up, to kind of what I asked you is, I know that us in this industry and most people don't like to make a habit of bad mouthing competitors, other products, industries, etc. But I would like to know, what did you see in the towing software space that led you to agree with me in the sense that, yes, we can do better? So what type of sort of like deficiencies were you seeing, or things that could be done better, in particular, as far as what our industry people might appreciate and or understand really well?
So a lot of the towing software for that exists now is either owned by people outside of towing, or softwares that are dedicated for towers, kind of owned by people who know the industry. They're piggybacking off of another, we'll call them framework other softwares, and they wedge in all the workflow that towers have to go through. And when we sat down and like really hammered out the first version of Tow Club, it was made from a tower's perspective. What is the workflow for someone dispatching a call, releasing a vehicle, how they manage lots? The deficiencies were that I don't know of more than I could count on one hand how many softwares were actually built with towers in mind from the beginning.
Got it. So you're thinking that there was a prevalence and maybe still is a prevalence of sort of, hey, this software works. This is let's call it a cookie cutter out of the box product that we can maybe, change some forms, maybe write some minor stuff to kind of work with it. And it was sort of presented to our industry, but not necessarily born from a tower's perspective, right? Is that
Yeah,
fair to
yeah,
say?
yeah, and your relationships with we built some of the tooling for the lean integration, for instance, because you had a solid relationship with the lean service provider.
Correct.
And so the fact that you're a respected part of this industry has made possible some things for Tow Club that were difficult otherwise, would have been almost inconceivable otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And thank you, Michael. And for those of you listening, to add a little context to, what Michael is discussing in terms of lean integration is, and I only bring this up because in other states they use different terminology for this, but essentially in California, when you tow a vehicle and you store it at your towing yard or your storage lot, after a certain period of time, you'll be required to file a lien against that vehicle by virtue of information that the DMV provides either to the tower, if the tower is equipped to do so, but usually to a lien sale administrator. In other words, someone that a towing company would hire to file and send the letters out so that the owner of the vehicle will get a notice that, hey, your vehicle has been towed, and the towing company plans to sell it at this date, this time. Go down and pick it up. Here's what the fees are. What Tow Club has been able to do, so everybody out there understands, is and let me rephrase what Michael has been able to do, because I certainly was cheerleading this effort, but I don't have anywhere near the acumen to pull something like this off. But Michael built an integration, which essentially means that our software communicates with the lien sale provider, so that when a tower has a vehicle in their yard, first they would get notified that vehicle is eligible to have a lien placed against it. But once the tower goes into that vehicle file in Tow Club, they simply press a button that relays all of the pertinent information that the lien sale processor needs in order to generate and begin lien sale proceedings against that vehicle. And so the system automatically populates the forms that the lien sale processor requires. They take that information, they tap DMV's database, they pull the information that's needed to notify that person. And then we very quickly, I believe it's the next business day, we'll get these documents back once that mailing has been done. And on these documents, there will be an indication of when we plan to sell the car. Tow Club software will capture the sale date and will use that information for purposes of our reports, so that when we are managing a storage lot, we are well aware of what cars are going to sell on what day, et cetera. And, to my knowledge, such a thing in the towing software space hasn't been done. So obviously I'm proud of what we have been able to do, meaning Michael, of course, and his team. I'll give some credit to some of his adjacent teammates there, but
not to rain on what makes us exceptional, but we were the first. Now other places do it also, but we were certainly the first by a mile.
But ours is better,
and it's better.
And
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll beat my chest and simultaneously your chest for that accomplishment. But in all seriousness, so that, for those of you listening, these little things which are not always apparent on the surface, but they really matter because what they do is they create an environment where the tower can do more from the seat of their pants behind the screen than they would otherwise, because they have access to so much more information that they
And
ordinarily wouldn't.
if I could slip in here, that I'd like to think that it's really helped you dial in your operations. You can see the vehicle life cycle at every stage.
Yes.
And yeah.
It's been for my towing company in particular, it's been very helpful for the other users of Tow Club. The preliminary reports that we have, and this is obviously this is a 2 to 3 year sort of case study, you could call it, in terms of the effectiveness, how it works. I have to say it's been really well. And you know, for those of you listening that are unsure of how it went prior, I mean, prior to this integration, what towers were required to do was contact the lien sale company, you know, either email them a VIN number and a license plate and all the pertinent information. So they were like doing double work, right? They're going into their software, they're pulling this information, they're emailing it, and then that document that gets returned once the lien sale proceedings have begun, now, yeah, it's a lot of paperwork to manage. And now those documents need to be stored somewhere, because those documents in most cases were not coming in electronic format. They were either being mailed, and to the lien sale processors that had electronic format, that meant that you have to take that PDF and or that document, however it was stored, and now store it in your software. But again, you don't have the sale date populated. There's a lot of information that's incomplete. And for those towers listening, I know they will likely nod their head in acknowledgement of this. One of the most difficult aspects of managing a tow yard comes when 2 years down the line, some investigator's calling, some cop, some police investigator, some attorney saying, hey, I want to know what happened to this car. And all you have is a stack of paperwork that you have to go through. And of course, that's not the case for users of Tow Club. It just
Yeah.
isn't. The documentation is complete. There's a clear chain of custody established in terms of what happened to the car. The sale proceedings are documented in the vehicle file. So I want to explore that a little bit more momentarily, Michael. Talk about some other deficiencies that you've noticed aside from what we just discussed.
So I'd say in everybody in the towing industry software portion of it, or at least adjacent companies, know their data is valuable, and but they haven't really explored options for like how to monetize it that make it consumable by other softwares in this space. You know, there used to be an insurance call, a motor club aggregator that found middling success and has now since gone away. But you know, in order for has been a real problem. We've had to develop the other ends of our integration because in this space, software has been you know, talented people have and money have gone elsewhere besides towing. And so people have erected gates around points of integration that would benefit and be mutually beneficial for both parties.
So what they're looking to do is say, hey, you know, I'm going to put gates around this because I spent a great deal of time developing this, and I don't want to sort of open my doors to other integrations or other products because I feel like I have this sort of proprietary,
Yeah.
you know, when in fact they could be working against themselves, so to speak. Am I right?
Yeah, I think as a whole, on the whole, you're typically working against yourself if you think that you know, that
You're not sharing your API, you're not.
yeah, if it's undocumented, if no one knows, hey, maybe they're open, but it doesn't have a clear description of like, hey, this is what I can provide if you provide a request formatted just this way.
Right.
So there's very few points of easy integration, and And you know, we've tried to shave off some of this some of the extra layers and
Right.
put it all in one place. I'd like to believe you can almost entirely manage your business out of Tow Club.
Yeah. Well, I think you know, and for those who are listening, who might hear that and say, "Well, I use other products." I mean, I don't see anything taboo about that, but I think to piggyback on what you said, Michael, I think that, and I'll just share my experience. My experience in the industry for I guess this is 24 years in the industry, has been that labor has become a monumental challenge. Um, and obviously this varies from market to market, but we're in the San Francisco Bay Area. Um, it's a fair question to ask, why would anyone come work for me when they had so many other opportunities? Now, what that does for us, that challenge, what it does in practice is it makes us want to look for automation so that we can do more with less people. Meaning, let's say you have 10 tow trucks and you have, I don't know, 15 drivers or whatever, and everybody works different shifts, etc. Well, do you need 9 administrators? Right? So that they
Yeah.
can file paperwork and cabinets, or can 3 do that job? And not to besmirch sort of labor, but there is a weakened position in terms of my industry, in terms of the leverage that they carry as employers. In other words, like maybe having less, but valuing them more, right? And giving
Yep.
them tools to make their job easier. Maybe that's a better approach than simply saying, no, I'll throw some inexpensive labor at this and I'll just throw a bunch of people at the problem. Um, as as dark as this sounds, I think we can all agree that for many reasons and for many clerical and administrative tasks, automation and computers are going to do generally a better job than humans in that respect, for
Yeah.
organizing data. Um, I think, if I'm wrong, tell me. I mean,
Oh no, I of course agree. As an engineer, I agree
right,
principally. And then, you know, just when you get to the granular stuff, that being able to sum up uh being able to sum stuff up in the software at a glance, how many cars on that particular day, all exposed to human error
right,
when you do it outside of it, a software for managing your
right.
enterprise.
So I'm gonna I'm going to assume the audience, at least in some respects, is wondering, hey, I wonder what somebody like Michael needs to do. So my follow-up to you is, you know, being that we're in the towing industry, this is a get your hands dirty kind of industry. This is a um, kind of industry where we don't ordinarily encounter people with your skill set. Could you tell me and everyone else a little bit about what type of acumen it takes to put together a product like you have?
Uh, yeah,
I mean,
I
you
mean,
wouldn't have done it if I hadn't yelled at you, but let's be like, what,
no,
what kind of
we've
skills?
been hanging out for so many years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What kind of skills? Give us like a layman's kind of, you know,
Yeah,
definition.
typically you need a computer science degree, but a firm understanding of how machines talk to each other, and that, you know, as you're building something, the machine is going to tell you no a lot. So so there's a lot of moving parts to software nowadays, different platforms that it has to run on. And there's a lot of people who come to it with their own understanding of how they perhaps navigated data from other products. And so you have to be patient with the people on the other end for how it makes sense for them to route calls to drivers, and where to look up auction paperwork. So, you know, you have to you're going to catch flack from the machines and from the people involved.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that I think that's important, and I'll add a little context to that for everybody that's listening. So Toe Club is momentarily releasing version 3.0. It's our first commercially available version, um, and well, it's an amount. It's a. I'll let you provide the sort of clinical term, but it's the first version that we are commercially marketing to the industry. Right now, we have a handful of users that I think Michael would refer to as
I would say at this point, perhaps we'd call them beta users.
beta users. Okay. Um, so we have the alpha beta users, and that was a supermarket when I was growing up, by the way. For those of you who are my age. Um, so yeah, so the context I wanted to add, and the reason why I brought that up was we are momentarily releasing what we refer to as version 3.0, our first commercially available version. Now, I wanted to ask you, and I only know a little, if I'm being completely honest, as we get close to this release, what is your typical day looking like now? Give me like your average day. I mean, in terms of as it relates to this new release.
Yeah,
What are you sort of looking for? What are you doing?
so uh we had a lot in what I'll call the first and second versions, that workflows that made sense for the for me developing it, for an engineer looking at information thinking, well, these are all the same category of record, and we'll just throw it in the list. We've I knew what the workflows were for you guys, and the day to day now is actually dialing in that we'd started off with this idea that yours is a PPI specialty software, and we wanted to open it up in a way that other towers would be able to use it in other types of towing. So we had to spend a lot of time discussing that pricing structures for you were very well organized. There's very few fluctuations, and I don't even think you're allowed to change prices on.
The exceptions are very minimal.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in other types of towing, there's a lot more granularity. And while this is true for PD towing, which your version is also very good at servicing, this next version, or I'm sorry, I was trying to explain that hours calculating service hours was a much simpler, for instance, process for PD towing than it would be more generally applied to service tow.
Right.
And so my day to day looks like listening to the feedback from the first version and then really dialing in where we'd made it too granular, or at least where we'd really made it specifically useful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's important. And I do want people, I want to add to what you said, Michael, because I think to add a little bit to what you said in the sense that, we've discussed this a lot internally with one another. But just so the listeners understand, our new release means that from a customization, can you explain, I should say, I'm not going to try to explain to me what 3.0 brings to the table in terms of broadening the use case for the product and how it does this. Because I don't need to tell you this, but I will let the listeners know. I frequently get contacted by industry people, by towers, who say, hey, I don't like XYZ software. I've been using it for 10 years, but someone told me that your software is only for PPI, and I do PD, I do motor clubs. Now, the motor clubs obviously add an additional layer of complexity to software. And again, this harkens back to what you were discussing in terms of industry participation through API, through integrations, etc. However, explain to the listeners why 3.0 in terms of, and I'll just use the word customization. Can you explain to us how it's going to accomplish that?
So,
Yeah, I
so,
need to know too.
yeah, yeah. Well, we've talked about it a lot more.
Yeah,
And so what had previously been, right now, all our deployments are, unique to the company. There's no shared resources. And all the customizations were things that Toe Club took on, that I took on. And now we're going to have well, I've heard all the possible variations. I'm being a little facetious now, but I've
right.
heard all the possible variations on customization.
Sure.
And so I've committed a lot of time to thinking about how these customizations could be made accessible. How a tower, a savvy tower, with some time and some patience could actually, change what makes populating this field valid, or receive alerts based on, I think a common one, if we could get it on the podcast, is if someone forgets to put in the PD badge number for a
Sure.
call, the police need to be
Yeah.
uh, certain triggers for information not being present.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a whole level of granularity that I'd like to say, if it exists, it's insufficient to the task
Right.
elsewhere.
Of customization. Yeah. And for those of you listening, um, how I interpret what Michael is saying is that there will be customization tools within the product to serve your particular need. If you tow for an airport and they have a particular way of allowing you to administer the invoices to them, and it needs to look a certain way, the tools within the product will enable you or someone adjacent to you, someone you've hired to customize the product for you, if you are so inclined, or to deploy the resources that we offer as Tow Club, as the provider of that software, in order to do that. So nobody that uses Tow Club's new release will be limited in terms of how the product can meet their needs. I'm not beating my chest here, but I think as a software app that's designed to meet everybody's needs, this was literally the only way to really accomplish this for the entire industry without reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, or having completely different looking versions of the product. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of general
Which would
tools.
create problems from a support perspective. Am I right,
Right.
Michael?
That's right. Yeah. Right now, I think giving more power to the towers to customize their specific use of the product is going to save them effort and us time, and we're ready to hit the ground rolling here, running.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited, and for everybody out there listening, this release should take place in 35 to 60 days. I wish I had a more narrow time frame, but I'm going to give Michael the respect of understanding that sometimes things don't always meet deadlines. But Michael, I have a follow-up. What do you think, if you had to choose, I don't know, a few items, maybe one, what do you think's been the most difficult in terms of how does, what is it about the towing industry in particular that like makes the development of software so challenging? Is it the diversity of the industry? I mean, we all,
Yeah,
for
I'd
example, I
say,
don't do motor club work, right? But a lot
yeah.
of towers do. I don't work for police departments. A lot of towers do. I don't do work for the
What you're
public.
talking about there is differentiation of services. That is probably one of the
Is that
largest.
the biggest challenge?
I think so. And then there, if I could be polite and say that there's some reticence for towers in dipping their toe to see what a software could do for them.
Right.
So in some ways, towers' technical competency is it's a hands-on industry.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a trade and we're an industry that's full of tradespeople. We don't always, again, I'm a tower, right? And I can tell you, and I want everybody listening to understand something. Like, we're in Silicon Valley. So I have a towing operation in Silicon Valley, and I have such little technical acumen on my staff. And I don't have a lot of technical acumen myself. And so if we and to some degree we were the use case for, how easy is this product to use? Now, we weren't the only ones, thankfully. There's a handful of people using Tow Club in real time, and they did not necessarily have any more technical acumen than we did. So I could see that being a challenge, right? Is like, it's not just capability, it's also usability
So
needs to be there.
toward that, I want to say it's not all towers' fault. I also brought up the gates that the other platforms have either no payment integration or a forget what the word is called, it escapes me now, but a payment solution that is
It's captive.
that's captive. That's right.
It ties the tower into a particular payment processor that they may or may not like necessarily.
That's right. And so these kinds of things are the fact that there are so many gates up between different layers of towing industry softwares does make it hard to put it all in one house. And so the differentiation plus that have just generally led to, I think the closing of just one too many doors to make it easy for towers.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's been my experience thus far. Michael, I wanted to ask, I talk to towers a lot, and when we began this venture, I spent a great deal of time talking to towers because I was trying to gauge, hey, listen, I've got this team that's willing to move on this and work on this product. I don't want to waste anyone's time. I want to increase the chances that the product is successful, that it gets widely utilized, etc. But like, when I was talking to towers, and as I am talking to towers now, they always tell me and discuss the challenges with their software. And they oftentimes bring up the fact that, well, I should say, I'm I'm oftentimes complaining about how difficult it is to explain to my industry why they need what they need. In other words, we come up with a breakthrough in the product, you deploy some successful integration, and so what I'm looking for you to explain is, can you explain to the audience, and you're a humble guy, so you're not going to beat your chest here, but how do you know so much about the industry? Like, how did you come to learn the industry so well? I mean,
So,
I know the answer to this, but I would like for you to talk
so
about some of the things that
also
you did. What have you done to learn this industry?
also you're a humble guy, and so we've known each other for a long time,
Right.
and
16 years.
yeah, and I'd like to say that we're both applied thinkers. We're looking for how to make things work. And when you presented this opportunity, you had opened the door. I got to sit there with with your drivers, with yourself, and walk through the day to day.
You
So
rode with the drivers.
that's right.
You
That's
rode
right.
with the drivers. You worked on the vehicle release counter. Got yelled at by people.
Oh yeah.
For those
Yours
of
is
you,
man. That's
yeah. For those of
yours
you,
is
my company specifically does private property towing, which is contentious in nature, and the vehicle claim office is oftentimes, or I should say, oftentimes experiences elevated audible levels. Uh, there's
yeah.
yelling. So So, obviously you spend time in the trucks, you spend time in the vehicle claim office, you spend time answering the phone. Um, how difficult was it putting the product together to meet those challenges? I mean, did those experiences help you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Phenomenal. You have an understanding of like how long before people lose patience on the other end.
This
Uh,
needs to work fast because I'm getting yelled at. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Yeah. And you guys have real stuff that you got to keep track of per release. I mean, it has to go back to the registered owner of the vehicle, and you need to be double certain that that when you let these guys into the yard, that they that in fact that's the person who owns that car and they're
Right.
okay to drive it. So the you're I brought up you're also humble, but it is our uh the access you've given me to the industry has actually enabled everything else. I've gotten to see and hear the frustrations of towers and people managing lots and uh, uh, just managing the fleet. Even just there's I've gotten to hear it in all its detail because we have really known each other and spent a lot of time together hammering this out.
Right. Right. So thank you for that, Michael. And obviously, yeah, I've taken up a lot of your valuable time in which you could be writing code. But before I leave, um, I did want to ask, I know you don't necessarily like to discuss things until they've sort of become a reality for you, but I'm wondering what your hopes are for the future of the product. And can you at least share a little bit of detail on some things that you are working on that obviously I know, but can you share some details on maybe a few items that you're working on that you think are going to be really game-changing sort of breakthroughs for the towing industry? What's
Yeah.
I mean, I like I said, I have some ideas, but
So that's a two-parter. The what I really would hope for the industry is there is a lot of situating information for people driving. I think Chris, your last guest,
Mhm.
uh, has uh, all these essentially training videos introducing people to like this is how you would tow this car X, Y, or Z. These are the mount points. I think they're called. Um,
Right.
uh, uh,
Mounting, yeah, yeah. But this is
yeah.
how you secure the vehicle. This is how you unlock the vehicle. This vehicle is electric. Do this, don't do that.
Yep.
This is how you want to, I mean,
Yeah.
very valuable information.
There is so much, and tow owners don't always acknowledge this, but there is a lot that a driver could get wrong,
Yes.
and and that they so consistently don't, or at least in what we can assess by looking at the data, they consistently don't, relatively. Uh, the expectations on them are sufficiently high that uh, there should be a little more tooling around them. We want to make it accessible for people who really need to be involved in the world and need to be present in the moment in order to provide that rescue tow, that
Sure.
service tow.
Right.
And then also for PPI towers, those are gentlemen who need to get in and get out.
Right.
Um,
So the
uh,
speed, the deployment, or the consideration for how quickly the mobile app is able to function, obviously critical.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
just for my use, but this is the case whether you arrive to a law enforcement request and this vehicle's on its side and
it's
there's a
blocking
passenger
traffic.
there and you can take some quick photos for documentation purposes. So you want the product to move with the speed that's needed to do the job quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Or if your guys have to take something that's blocking the ingress egress of a property, you know, that's speed
Right.
is a factor.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about what's coming, because
Okay,
that
so fail safe
and
safe.
I'm not holding you to this, Michael, but I obviously we've talked a lot about furthering how much automation can exist for
Yep.
towers within the product. Tell me a little bit about what you got, what you're working on.
Okay, so the customization is a big part of this. Not just for your guys, but hey, in the vehicle life cycle, there are a lot of things for which you don't really realize how much it's costing you administratively until uh until you know you've been dinged for it a couple times. And by dinged, I just mean there's an interruption to the flow of
Right.
of the day. Uh, and so being able to customize, like, okay, you can't even enter in bad data. So validations on the fields, custom validations, being able to receive notifications for specific trigger events. I brought up the PD scenario, the PD badge number.
Right.
Um, uh, and that you're capable of setting up those notifications for any field that exists on in your workflow currently. Those are I would like to believe they are game changing. You can schedule from within the app a little more fluidly, describe your shifts, and I would look forward to integrating with some HR companies to enable people to clock in, clock out.
Within our product.
Yeah, that's right. And we know that state to state, a vehicle inspection looks different. If you do, you know,
Depending on the type of towing you're doing and the type of
yes.
vehicle you're operating. Yeah.
So being able to create uh, inspections that meet the regulation, all stuff that if you're doing it out of a software, are just difficult to manage, difficult to refer to, and I'd like to say that we're really enabling towers now to put more in that they can easily access. The last thing that a software should do is get in your way.
Right. Yeah. There's no doubt. Now, the big one. Talk to me about the big one.
The big one.
The big one.
Oh,
The
okay.
kiosk.
So you have always
I,
had
I
this.
know you don't want to talk about this because it's
Okay.
still in process,
But
but
automated
I want to
release.
demonstrate to the listeners that everything that's on our mind in terms of the product, and when I say our mind, Michael's mind, is how can how can we put something together that really makes it easy for towers? So take it away. I mean, like
Yeah.
tell us
Yeah.
about this
So,
kiosk.
so, so the idea behind the kiosk is this. Here's another thing I'll mention. Don't want to enable people to do anything that's jumps a step, you know? So,
Sure.
as we've talked about this, we've kind of had to narrow it. You can't just let people pass the gate to pick up their car. You know,
Sure.
it's the kiosk is going to enable towers to at least verify that hey, a person is who they claim they are. They're going to be able to scan some documents of whatever they have present or submit it online, and notify your drivers that or whoever's on duty that you've got someone waiting and they've submitted all the release information, essentially gone through the steps that your staff has to go through now. And we ideally, depending on the hardware we land on,
Mhm.
it's going to be your staff will know, like, okay, there's a video of the person who's just uploaded this information, and they're okay to pay. In California, I assume this is true elsewhere, but I know definitively in California, you release only to the registered owner unless they've provided some other documentation.
They've met some other requirements. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't, and you really are very safe and accepting only a payment from the registered owner or the authorized agent.
Yeah.
And so there has to be an obstacle currently before payment is made. So being able to accept payment from this terminal, but also only being able to do it in the scenario that this is in fact who will be taking the car.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, we will drip some more information as progress is made on what I'm going to affectionately refer to as the automated vehicle release kiosk. For those of you that operate vehicle storage lots, most of you, I imagine, this will, and I want everyone to understand that our hesitancy to get too granular in our explanations here is because there are some items that are still fuzzy and have yet to be established. We have to work with a hardware partner so that that we can make this a reality. But as more information is available, I imagine in the next 90 days to 120 days, we will release more information, perhaps a working demo at some point this year. We're very excited about this. This is one of the ways in which Tow Club is working really hard. And by Tow Club, I mean Michael and his team.
You are
Not
too.
me, not me. I'm just talking about it. But we're working really hard to get ahead of the incoming issues, again, with labor, with rising costs. These are going to be monumental factors that are going to sort of be facing us in the next, however many years. And so we're just working hard to provide solutions for that. Now, thankfully, as a tower myself, I can actually demonstrate these breakthroughs, and I can vet as a tower myself. Hey, in this scenario, this works. This works for this. This works for this. This doesn't work for this. And so I can sort of bear the brunt of some of the developmental headaches associated with breakthroughs like this, because there are some. I don't want to give people the impression that Michael and his team can work some magic and whip things out in too short of a period of time. There is an exhaustive process to vet these procedures, to vet hardware usage, what it means, how does it notify you, how do you verify that people have paid. There's a lot that goes into it. Michael, I know you have some reluctance again to talk about this. I really appreciate you breaking that down and providing some context. And I did just want to leave towers with this message. If you aren't willing to know and you aren't willing to understand what you are required to do, don't tow. It's really as simple as that. Michael, I really appreciate you joining us, man. Thanks again for all the explanations.
Yeah, this was great. Talk to you soon, Art.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Michael.